In February of 2015, I was diagnosed with glioblastoma multiforme, brain cancer. Stage 4. And so that was kind of a big shocker. First of all, we were told that it was
Bell's palsy.
Bell's palsy was diagnosed. My left side of my face just dropped down a little bit, and so that's what they thought it was. And then I got scheduled for a CT scan, and we were told that it was actually a tumor.
We didn't know how long it was going to take to get that MRI after we had the CT scan, so we went to Calgary and had it the next day and came back for an appointment with a neurosurgeon and gave him the disc. Otherwise we would have had to wait, we didn't know how long to get that MRI in Canada. So when we walked in, he looked at it and he said he was pretty sure that Jeff had glioblastoma just by the looks of the tumor. And he admitted Jeff to the hospital that day in Regina. And the reason why he admitted him into the hospital was because in order to keep your spot on the slate for surgery, because he wasn't an emergency, but he needed to have surgery as soon as possible. So they put him in the hospital to keep his place on the slate, is what they called it. So then he had testing, bone testing, body scans.
Just to make sure there was no other cancer, and it was just that the brain cancer was the primary tumor.
And it was, which we didn't know if it was a good or bad thing, so.
And then we ended up, actually my father, he got checking into more, he'd had a surgery previously down in Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and he got checking in down there, and we actually ended up going down there for my first surgery. That all went fine, and they were able to get about 60% or something of the tumor out at that time. I didn't want to come out of there with any deficiencies, so we kind of explained that to the doctor, and that's why he stopped when he did. It's because there was a major blood vessel going through it, and he didn't want to cut that because it wouldn't have been good. So after that, we went to Scottsdale, Arizona for radiation and chemo down there. Homeschooled our kids down there. My aunt is an ex-school teacher, and she looked after that for us and my parents, obviously.
For 6 weeks.
For 6 weeks. Then we came back to Canada and did more chemo up here.
And we were doctoring in Alberta at that time because the cancer center up here couldn't get us an oncologist, so his dad again checked into getting out there, and because Jeff had family, his brother and sister and his mom and dad, they okayed it for him to go out there because he could see an oncologist right away. So from May, when we came back in May from the radiation and chemo in Scottsdale till October of 15, we were doctoring in Alberta, so Jeff would fly back and forth for MRIs and to receive his chemo out there. And his chemo was just 5 days a week and 21 days off. So it was pill form. He didn't have to get an IV or nothing. Then in October of 15, when we went out for his doctor appointment, they said it was growing back. So we had to, again, plan quickly because we knew it's very aggressive. So we talked to a surgeon in Calgary, and he could do the same. He said it would be the same surgery again across the world. And Jeff's mom and dad had been over to Tijuana, Mexico, and to a clinic there, and they met a neurosurgeon there, and he said he could do all the same as Canada would, except for they can do a chemotolerance test and they can build a vaccine for Jeff, for Jeff. So we had actually been down to Tijuana in July of 15, and we were there for 5 weeks with our kids. And that was again through research by his dad. And that's all natural treatments. They do a low dose chemo down there, which Jeff did receive. And we came back, and then in October, that's when it had recurred. So we ended up going, Jeff decided he wanted to have the chemotolerance test and the vaccine, just because the tumor that he has, there's only 2 types of chemo, they told us, that would break the blood-brain barrier. So we knew our options weren't a lot. So he went down there and he had surgery on November 7th, and they were very aggressive. But that was because, again, Jeff didn't want to come out with deficiencies, but at that point it grew back in 6 months, and I just looked at the surgeon and said, I don't care. Take whatever you have to get whatever you can. If I have to push him in a wheelchair, I will. If he has to come to our kids' hockey in a wheelchair, that's fine. I just want you to do the best you can. So he did, and so far he's been lucky. It hasn't changed, it hasn't grown, and his last MRI 3 months ago actually showed that it was slightly smaller, what's left in there. So from November of 15 to October of 16, that's when the Avastin came into place, and that's when we were able to have it at St. Joseph's Hospital, thanks to Tara and Greg.
Crawford.